Right, so today we want to solve quadratic equation using two different methods. That's the first one we'll be considering is completing squares. Now, to be able to solve any quadratic equation successfully using completing squares method, then it means that you have to go through some or all these steps. So I've just put those methods for you and for your consideration. So firstly, we say that you write all quadratic equation in standard forms. And so make sure that if it's a quadratic equation, then you have it in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So irrespective of how the equation is given, you make sure that you write the equation to suit the standard. And so if I have equation that is written in the form of x squared equals minus 2x minus 4, then because I'm dealing with a quadratic equation, I first want to solve by completing squares, and I just want to go systematic. The first thing I'm doing is that I'm making sure that this equation is in standard form in the form of this. So you realize that you have your x squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So you subtract, you add 2x to the right side of the equation, 4 to the right side of the equation to have x squared plus 2x plus 4 equals 0. Once I'm able to do this, it means that I have been able to write this in the standard form to which I want the equation. Now, if I leave it this way, solving the equation will become a problem. Okay, that's the first thing. So if I'm solving by completing squares, it's very simple. Now the second step says that I make sure that, now let me say at this point, somebody may decide that, okay, eventually as we go through the steps, somebody may see that, okay, there's no need even moving this constants, because at the end of the day, I'm still leaving the constants at the right side of the equation. But not everybody will see, so that's why we're just trying to go systematic or step by step. So now the second says that make sure that the coefficient of x squared is always equal to 1. So considering this equation that I have x squared plus 2x plus 4 equals 0. Now the emphasis is that, is the coefficient of x squared equals 1? Yes. If so, then I'm good to go. Okay, so for this equation, we have a coefficient of x equals 1, and that is okay. Now, the third step says that make sure you move the constant term to the other side of the equation. And so this is the constant term, which is also like c. And so our c equals 4, so it becomes a constant. Now we move the constant term to the other side of the equation. By so doing, you subtract 4 from both sides of the equation. So we have x squared plus 2x equals minus 4. So that's the third step that we do. Okay, now we go to our fourth step. Now 4 steps are 3 different operations put together. And so what are the operations? The first one says that no, pick the coefficient of x, which is always b, and after that divide by 2, square it, and add it to both sides of the equation. So we have 3 things in one. Pick this coefficient, which is always, pick this coefficient. So in this case, our coefficient of x is 2. Now divide it by 2, square it, and add it to both sides of the equation. So this is how I want you to do it. You have your square x squared plus 2x. Now this point says that pick this, which is 2, divide by 2, and square it. equals -4 plus 2 over 2 squared. Now, why is this very important? It's very important because at some point or in some part of the equation, you wouldn't get an even number where you divide by 2 to get just a number. Sometimes you may have like a fraction. And so it's very important you know it this way so that you know that 2 divided by 2 is obviously 1. And so I have x squared plus 2x plus 1 squared. Don't square this at this point. If you're solving by completing squares, don't square this. Please, don't square this. Leave it as it is. Whatever number you have, leave it like this. Some people will just get here and say, okay, 1 squared is equal to 1, so they just square it. No, leave it. Okay. Equals -4 plus 1. Now, on the right side or on the other side of the equation, you are supposed to just square it, and if you have any value, just add it. But on the left side of the equation, please always make sure that you leave this square. Don't touch it. Leave it there. And so let's move on. Okay. The next step says that because there is a square here and there is a square here, the only one thing that you can do for it to be so easy is the fact that I have my x plus 1 all squared. Now, this place is positive because all this within the equation is also positive. It's also positive. Now, we'll get a scenario where we have to. But this is it equals -3 plus 1 gives us -3. -4 plus 1 is -3. So, now, you can, because you are here, you take square root of both sides. And so if you take square root of both sides, you have x plus 1 equals plus or minus square root of -3. And as we usually know, square root of -3, x plus 1 equals plus or minus square root of 3 multiplying I, or let's say root of -1, which is eventually I. So if I am solving for x, then x equals -1 plus or minus square root of 3i. And so I have two parts of the equation. One of the equation is x1, which is -1 plus square root of 3i, and the next part of the equation, which is x2 -1 plus square root of 3i. So this place becomes negative in that order. So these are my two roots that I'm looking out for. I believe this makes sense and it's in order. Now the first one is saying that I write the equation to suit the standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. The second step says that after I'm done with that, I make sure that the coefficient of x squared is always 1. If not, then I divide through. Now this equation, we have coefficient of x squared equals 1. So our life was just made very simple. Now the next step says that I try to move the constant to the other side of the equation. So by moving, I subtract 4 from both sides of the equation, and I had x squared plus 2x equals -4. Now the fourth step says that I consider the square root of x, which is 2 in this equation. Now add half of this to the other side of the equation. So it's 2 over 2 squared, and then equals -4 plus, I'm getting the same thing, so whatever I did here, I'm doing the same thing to the right side of the equation. 2 over 2. Yes, I understand that we may have thought that, why not say that, okay, 2 over 2 is always 1, so just say 1 squared. Yes, then I said that no, in most cases, sometimes you may have equation where you wouldn't have this. So we'll give an example of such equations, and you realize that, for instance, if our x, the coefficient of x was like 3, you cannot say that you are taking 1.5 of it, because you are solving the whole equation. And so that's the reason why I just brought this fraction, and it's also very important as we learn. That's very good. So we move on, then we're able to solve for x, and that settles the equation. Thank you. Now let's pick another equation. You may feel free to pause the video and try. 2x squared minus 4x minus 6 equals 0. So you can feel free to pause the video and try. Right, so to be able to go through this successfully, the first thing is saying that, is this in the standard we're looking for? What's the standard? Yes, it's in the standard we're looking for, so we're good. Now, the second step says that make sure that the coefficient of x is also always equal to 1. In this case, our coefficient of x is not 1, but our coefficient of x is 2. So if that is the case, then divide by 2. So I have x squared minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. That's it. Good, great. Now, once I've been able to do this, what's the next step? The next step says that I'm good to go, so I don't have any problem. Now, the next step, which is eventually the third step, says that move the constant, which is always c, to the other side of the equation. So we call it manipulation. So we're just manipulating this. So it's x squared minus 2x equals 3. Now, can we move on? Yes, we can, because we are done with the third step. So always keep asking, which step am I? What am I doing? At what particular point? These are questions that you need to always ask yourself. Now, once I'm here, the next step says that, okay, so what do? Take half of this and add it to both sides of the equation by squaring. So we have x squared minus 2x plus, the coefficient of x is minus 2 over 2 squared equals 3 plus minus 2 over 2 squared. Once again, I'm repeating this because I said that it's not always the case to get an even number as your denominator. So if you don't get it, then you are good to go. And so let's have it again. So what's the next step? If you divide -2 by 2, you obviously have -1. I said that don't square this part. For this part, for the right side, you can square, but for the left side, please don't square it. So let's go on again. We have x squared minus, okay, so eventually we will have x squared minus 2x minus 1 something like this squared equals 3 plus 1. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because if you're not careful, you would miss this point. Now, what does this say? It says that I'm taking this, so I have my x squared x plus 1 squared. Oh, let me clean it. X minus 1 squared equals 4. Now, if you expand this, don't forget I said if you expand this, you should get back to this. Now, you realize that at this point, there was a negative, and so it's affecting this. And so if you do this part really very well, you realize that you wouldn't have a problem, because for this part, if you do it well, it's just a matter of picking this and that and just taking the parentheses of it and squaring it. Very simple. But if you square this before, it means that negative 1 squared is 1. That is where you have a problem. That's why I said, don't just waste time here. Just maintain it as it is, so that by working with this part, it becomes so easy for you. Okay, so by this, what do we have again? Because we have a square, we take square root of both sides, and we have x minus 1 equals plus or minus root 4. And I have x minus 1 equals plus or minus 2. So if I solve for x, I have x equals 1 plus 2, which is equals 3. X equals 1 minus 2, which equals minus 1. So the solutions I'm looking for, x is either x equals 3 or x equals minus 1. I've been able to solve this equation using the methods of completing square. Let's do the last one, and I'll give you some exercises to try on. Make sure you work on this, feel free. So we're working on x squared plus 6x plus 5 equals 0. So feel free to pause the video and try. Okay, so for this, firstly, is it standard? Yes. Is the coefficient of x squared equals 1? Yes, so I'm good to go. What's the next step? Move the constant, which is 5, to the other side of the equation. So I take 5 from both sides of the equation, and I have x squared plus 6x equals minus 5. The fourth step says that I consider the coefficient of x. So what's the coefficient of x? The coefficient of x is 6. Now what do I do with it? Just write this equation that I have originally and add this over 2 squared equals minus 5 plus square root of 6 over 2 squared. Okay, so once again I said that if you divide 6 by 2, you have 3, so it's like x squared plus 6x plus 3 squared. Once again I said don't square this. Because if you take the square of 3, it's 9. If you are not careful, people will just say that x squared plus 6x plus 9. And that will just complicate matters for you. I said that for the left side, please leave it like that. Don't tamper with the left side. Just leave it like that because you would need it in the next step. People get here and they just square this, distribute this 2 times, and they have 9. And now they don't know where to go from this side. Please, when you get to the side, leave it like that. Don't touch the left side of the equation. Always make sure that that part is always intact. Don't simplify this. Leave it in that form. Okay, so equals minus 5 plus 9 because this 3 times and 3 squared is equal to 9. Okay, I believe that we've passed the stage. That's why I'm just trying to. On the right side, you simplify this. On the left side, leave it like that because you still need this again. And what we've said is that once you get to this side and you are through, just pick the x. So I have my x plus, because this one is positive. If it is negative, like the first one you did, you saw that I did put them in parentheses to make sure that you are not making any mistake. Now, so this one is 3 r squared equals 4. And what do I do here from here? I square both sides of the equation. So how do I square both sides? I take square root of both sides of the equation. So my x plus 3 equals plus or negative square root of 4. And I have x plus 3 equals plus or minus 2. Now, I have 2 sides of the equation, so I solve for x. So one part of the equation says that my x equals minus 3 plus 2, which equals minus 1. And the other part of the equation says I have negative 3, negative 2, which is negative 5. So 2 parts of the equation are x1 equals negative 1, x2 equals negative 5. So this is eventually what I'm talking about. So what you're doing here is just following steps, following systematically and making sure that you're good to go. I think by now everyone should be able to solve quadratic equations using the methods of squares. And so I want to say that you may go through this, write this, and go through them. So we have x squared plus 2x minus 3 equals 0. We have x minus 2x plus 2 equals 0. 3x squared plus 4x equals 10. So because this, okay, so let's try this together. I think you guys can do this, so let's try this together. Now let's do this so you can go ahead and do the rest. Okay, so we have 3x squared plus 4x equals 10. Okay, now the first thing is saying that I make sure that the equation is in the standard form. Now we've passed that stage because I know that at the third step, I will still move the constant to the right side. Now because this is the only constant that is here, there's no need bringing it here and on the third step going back again. So you're good to go, you're fine. You can leave it there. If you feel like no, you don't just understand, you can still bring it back, but on the third step, you still have to move it again. And so once you have your constant here, it's fine. There's no need. So you have your first step, which is, although not, suiting this equation, but because you have your x squared and your x on the left side of the equation, you are still fine. So make sure that at every point in time, you have all values of x squared and x on the left side of the equation, and you'll be fine. So at this point, I think you are good. Now, second step says that divide this. Make sure that the coefficient of x squared is this. So make sure that the coefficient of x squared is 1. So how do I go about it? I divide by 3. Okay, so I have x squared plus 4 over 3 x equals 10 over 3. Okay, so at this point, just say that first x squared plus 4 over 3x plus 4 over 3 over 2 squared equals 10 over 3 plus 4 over 3 over 2 squared. Okay. Okay, so if I get to this side, I'm good to go. Because I have this, now if I have 4 over 3 all over 2 how do I solve for this? It's more or less like I have 4 over 3 divided by 2 over 1. And so to be able to do this, I have 4 over 3 times 1 over 2 because I take the reciprocal of this to be able to get this. And so if you punch this on a calculator or any other thing, you have x squared plus 4 over 3 plus 4 over 2, 4 over 6, let me write it square, 4 over 6 squared equals 10 over 3 plus 4 over 6 squared. Okay, so if I have this, it makes it very simple because 2 goes here 2, 2 goes here 3. So 2 goes here 2, 2 goes here 3. And so I have x squared plus 2 over 3 all squared. Don't forget, I said that we're doing this because if you expand this or if you distribute this, it should be equal to this. Okay? So we have 10 over 3 plus, this one gives us 2, 6 goes here, 3, 2 goes here, 2. So I have 2 over 3, which is 4. 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9. Okay. So x squared plus 2 over 3 squared equals, and what's the common term here? So my common term is 9, and I have 3 times 10 plus 4 over 9. So x squared plus 2 over 3 all squared equals 34 over 9. So you solve this. At this point, you only have to take the square root of both sides. So taking square root of both sides, I have x plus, my bad. So at this point, I only have x plus 2 on 3 over 3 equals plus or minus root 34 over 9. So if I'm solving for this, then I have two parts of the equation. So the first part of the equation says my x equals negative 2 on 3 plus or minus square root of 34 over 9. And so I have two parts of the equation. So the first part, which is x1, is minus 2 over 3 plus square root of 34 over 9. And x2, which is the second part of the equation, says square root of 34 over 9. So basically, this is what we need. It's very important to note that it's not always the case to get an even number where you can just divide and make it very simple. Sometimes it's quite complicated, but I believe that if you go through the steps that have already been given you, you will be fine. So I'm just going to post these steps again in Canvas for you to go through them and make sure that you try it. So let's go by this. I think we'll do the first part and then we'll leave the rest for you to complete it. So we have equation IV. Once again, don't hesitate to pause the video and work on it, then compare your answers. Okay, so we have 13x minus 16. So this one of the equations also that we'll be looking at. Very simple. Now, you see that we have, does it follow this? Ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0? No, because we have 13x on the other side of the equation. I said that if it's only the constant that is on the other side of the equation, it's okay. Because the third step says that after you do all these things, you still need to move the constant back to the other side of the equation. So if you have the constant on the other side of the equation, it's okay. But because we have x on the other side of the equation, it means that no, it's not accepted. We have to make sure we move it back to where it's supposed to be. Okay, so this is how we go about it. So I'm going to write this as 4x squared minus 3x. So you subtract 13x from both sides of the equation. So minus 3x minus 13x equals minus 16. And this is acceptable because you will eventually move this back again. And so there's no need bringing it back. Then you get to the third step, then also move it back. If you have only your constant left at the right side of the equation, it's okay. And once again, I'm talking about completing square method or using the method of completing squares. If we are saying solving using factoring, then this method is not applicable. This way, we can't do it like that because it always expects us to move everything. Is x squared plus bx plus c. Factoring ensures that we move everything onto the other side of the equation. But for completing squares, although we have to make sure that we write the equation in the standard form, but we'll still eventually move it out. And so there is no need, if you have it on the other side of the equation, there's no need moving it again. Okay, so we can write it this way. So we have our 4x squared minus 16x equals minus 16. And at this point, our step 2 says that you divide this, because you make sure that the coefficient of x squared is always 1. So you divide by 4, and then by 4. And so you have an equation in the form of x squared minus 4x equals minus 4. And so at this point, I believe strongly that we can continue from this side up, and then make sure that you also go through these problems together. And I believe that if you're able to go through it systematically just as we've done, I'm sure that you would be able to pass your second quiz at ease. Thank you.